I'd like to share some of my impressions of Cuba from my travels there in 2010 and 2012. These fishing boats are in the Bay of Baracoa at the eastern end of Cuba. Columbus arrived here on his first voyage in 1492, and in his journal noted the unusual shape of the mountains seen here. He also wrote, "This is the most beautiful place in the world." The indigenous Taino people must have thought so too, I imagine. But very soon the Taino were fighting against the Spanish for their very existence. Atway was a renowned Taino cacique who, with his followers, fought the invaders until he was betrayed. Before he was burnt at the stake, the Spanish asked him if he would like to be converted so he could go to heaven. Hatway asked if the Spanish would be there, and when they said yes, he replied that he'd rather go to hell. I imagine this scene of forest, ferns, and the bohea in the distance seen here at the Humboldt National Park wouldn't have changed that much since Hatway's time. Now this is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Cuba is a land of both astonishing beauty and a people who have struggled for justice and resistance against oppression. This mural in Baracoa traces some of that history of resistance for the last 500 years. Everyday life can be a challenge for Cubans, including getting around. Worn-out engines and expensive fuel mean that one of the main means of transportation is horsepower, literally. And sometimes street-level air quality isn't that great. A common scene can be a car parked on the side of the road like this, undergoing impromptu repairs. And since necessity is the mother of invention, Cubans have become endlessly creative in keeping worn-out things working. So this is what an early morning rush hour scene looks like in Cienfuegos. In fact, it is a common scene all over Cuba to see people walking, riding bicycles, and taking horse-drawn carriages. Wherever we went, we often saw children involved in self-organized games. This ruined church in Trinidad is being used for a game of soccer, and just up to the left you can see a light fixture for evening use. These boys playing ball may live in the building adjoining this courtyard in La Habana. Some buildings in the city are really in very bad shape. But we notice changes in the city even in the short space of just 2 years with ongoing repairs and restorations. This has got to be one of the most strange, most bizarre, and at the same time most beautiful cities I've ever seen. On a street where one building can be near ruins, the next building will have been fully restored and be in beautiful condition. And everywhere there is a rich sense of color and textures. I took this shot of the Che banner and flags hanging off of a private terrace just after New Year's Day, which is the anniversary date of the 1959 revolution. And while not everyone in the country supports those revolutionary aims, and there is a lot of discussion about how to make improvements in the country, there is also a genuine and widespread respect for Che Guevara and his ideals. And this is an early morning view of La Habana from Boulevard Martí. And you can see that it's still used as a residence, and there's an interesting mural there, and a flare of a refinery in the background doesn't help the air quality in the city either. I love this sculpture by Rita Longa outside the Museum of Contemporary Art in La Habana. It is called Form, Space, and Light. The flowing organic lines and rhythmic curving forms, including the subtle mermaid form, are carved in marble and give movement of the sea. This is a shot of the fishermen's colony in La Bahía de Santiago de Cuba on Cayo Granma. Visitors can take a little ferry on an afternoon trip from Santiago and take in the ambiance and have a meal at a restaurant there. And these fishing boats are at a little village not far from Baracoa, back in the east. It is an inviting tropical scene, but if you wanted to go swimming there, you'd have to be careful of the current rushing out through the channel between the reefs that you can see in the distance. That can be quite dangerous if you're not careful. Cuba is a wonderful place to explore the undersea world. I took this shot at about the 30-meter depth at Punta Frances on La Isla de la Juventud. The sponge and the corals in the foreground show their full colors as I lit them. Punta Frances is a national park, and it's a significant area of biodiversity, and it was a privilege to be able to dive there. Here we're at about 17 meters deep, and this is a large moray eel coming out of its coral hideout to check out the visitors. Morays have a somewhat menacing look, but they're actually quite shy. One of the great things that I love to do while traveling is to watch people. And here this lady is taking a break from selling her papers in La Habana and is reading the New Year's edition of the Granma newspaper. And of course, the Granma became famous as the vessel that brought Fidel Castro and his fellow revolutionaries to Cuba. I love the feeling of how this lady is enjoying the sweet moment of feeding the pigeons. While this is of a certain time and place, I feel that there's something about this that transcends both. And these guys playing and singing in the square in Santiago are masterful musicians. They call themselves Los Jubilados del Caribe, and all I can say here is that you must go there in person and just let them weave their magic for you.
Thank you, Sarama. We didn't